Recording covered.
Okay, great. So we're ready to start. So I will chair this afternoon session, the first afternoon session with two speakers, Emmanuel and Anders, after this. So it's a great pleasure to have as the first speaker of this session, Emmanuel Gobet. Emmanuel is a professor at École Polytechnique in Paris and is a great expert in stochastic analysis and mathematical finance. His talk will be on generative modeling of extremes with neural networks. Manuel, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation and giving me this opportunity to present this series of work. I would have loved to be on site, but this time it was not possible. Sorry, but maybe it will be another edition, and I would be able to attend in person. This is a series of joint work with Michael Allouche. Michael Allouche was a PhD student, now he's working in the industry. And Stéphane Girard is a research director at INRIA in Grenoble. And we have conducted a series of works about how to generate extremes, quantity probability in details, using this new paradigm of artificial intelligence. Okay, so this is based on several things. So a paper published in a Journal of Machine Learning, one submitted and one in progress. So let's go. So you know the situation, the context. This is we are concerned often with risk management issues. So that is, we want to sample or predict or quantify or assess the risk of having a big loss. So this kind of event that can occur with very small probability, but which impact is can be huge. Okay, and so either you try to model the quantities of interest. Okay, so typically the data you have, you can put a model, a mathematical model on this or a statistical model on this, and then once you have designed this model, then you can run your favorite Monte Carlo methods. So based on impedance sampling, on Markov chain Monte Carlo methods, plus splitting methods or interacting particle system. Okay. Usually these methods for complex systems are quite heavy, okay, to run, and so it takes time, okay? So the idea here is, what if we could design directly a digital twin on this method? So that is, you take time to generate these scenarios for explaining what kind of crisis you can face typically, and once you have generated this data, is there any way to regenerate easily, more quickly, this data set using another method? Okay, and this is typically the situation we also want to have if you are not in a position to model your data set. So typically you just collect some true data, okay, coming from complex system, and you are just interested in the tail of these data set. No way to put a physical model of this or economical model or financial model, okay? You just want to mimic the data set you have, because modeling directly data is too complex. And so this is the common point that in any case, we have a true data set made of true data, typically historical financial return, okay, with many of these data. So no way to have a good model for high dimension problem and so on. Or you have a very complex system, you can run it because this is physical model, okay? So typically I have in mind a weather model, but this is a black model, so it takes time to generate extreme of this, okay? And at the end, you want to have a new algorithm able to just take this data set you have collected or have generated, and then re-simulate this data set with a fast simulation algorithm. Okay, and usually this is complex because you are concerned here. We are concerned with extreme of this extreme value of this data set. Okay, so of course it takes time to collect some data, to generate this data. Then you're going to consider a small subset of this data set, okay, just because you want to focus on the tails of the distribution. Okay, so this is for the context. So you know this picture of a neural network architecture. So you have here one layer, one input layer, the red one, the green one for the output, and we have two hidden layers in blue. At some point in the presentation, I will evaluate the complexity of the neural network. In fact, it will correspond to the number of neurons and also the number of connection between the neurons of the layer. So here, typically, you have 16 direct connection, direct twin between the neurons, but you know that you still have to add some bias in the neural network, so that you're going to make some linear combination between the value of one layer to compute the values for the next layer. But when you do this linear combination, in addition, you have to put a constant term, and so at the end you have a global complexity. So this is standard, and one thing with specific in this presentation is that we're going to consider two types of activation function. So activation function is the way you transform the linear combination here in this unit here. Usually we are familiar with ReLU function. This is the positive part of X typically. But here the ReLU function, which is a smooth extension of the ReLU on the negative axis, okay, has a specific property we're going to take advantage of in the second part of the presentation. So in fact, the ReLU function has a specific feature which gives a nice property that can be done with a ReLU function. So just to keep in mind this. Okay, so my presentation will be in two parts. In fact, I have two methods for generating the extremes based on ReLU and ReLU. So what is the generative model? Maybe I'm sorry for those who know the story, but maybe there are some students or not so familiar with this. So generative modeling is about how to sample a distribution using some input distribution we call latent distribution, okay, and using a black box function, which is Z. Okay, so typically you are given a random variable with a target distribution, okay, so this is the distribution of interest, and you want to find a G which is going to map some random variable Z, which is going to put as input. So typically imagine a uniform distribution or Gaussian distribution, okay. This is the distribution you can sample easily. This is the latent distribution, and you want to transform the latent variable into something which has the right distribution. So this is the game of generative modeling. So of course, there are many ways to do this. There's a very general theorem called Kuratowski theorem, which says essentially that if you just pick a single uniform distribution, then there's a measurable function able to generate any distribution you want. Okay, this is a very, very general result in a quite abstract space. Okay, Polish space for the X here. So it is quite general, but in fact there are many choices. Okay, so in fact all the art of generative modeling is to find what is a good G, a good Z, so that you have a good approximation of this equality here. Okay, so the right question is, what is the dimension of the latent space? What is the dimension of D prime here? What is so the distribution itself? What is the parametrization of the G? And then maybe you want to optimize the parametrization so that you have an equality here. So one paradigm to do this is what we call generative adversarial network. I will explain shortly after this. So what is complicated in our case compared to usual case of generative modeling is that we are concerned with only a case where we have only a few data. Okay, So we are concerned with the extremes, the tail of the distribution. So of course, you should learn your problem, you should learn your G and so on, only with a few data. Okay, it's not millions or billions of images you want to resample. Here you just consider a few data points. Okay, and so what is the miracle behind this? Is that we're going to take advantage of the structure of the problem. The structure is that we deal with extreme values, and so there's an extreme value theory to tell you what is the architecture, what is the structure of the extreme, of the tail distribution in that case. So we're going to take advantage of this knowledge to design some appropriate parametrization, which hopefully will be efficient. Okay, just a slide on the GAN. So typically you have some observation. You consider they are just ID of the same distribution. You don't know this distribution. You want to resample from this distribution. Okay, so you're going to find a parametrization, a G, okay, with some parameter theta, and you want to find a way to learn the optimal parameter so that the things you're going to regenerate after resampling the Z, retransforming them with the G, will give you some new sample very close to the distribution implicit to the observation of X. To do this, in the paradigm of GAN, you have a discriminator able to distinguish which role is to distinguish between the fake data and the true data. Okay, so this discriminator has to be learned as well. Okay. Okay, and so at the end you have this kind of representation. You have a data set of observation. You have a parametrization of your G with some latent distribution to put in input here, and at the end you're going to generate either true data, either fake data, and then the discriminator will distinguish if it is a true or fake data. Okay. And at the end, you have a min-max problem. So in fact, the discriminator wants to be the best one to distinguish the fake from the true one. And the generator wants to be the more efficient in the way that you can not distinguish at the end fake from true data. So in fact, I'm not going to focus on the optimization problem. I'm going to rather to focus on the way we parameterize the this. Okay, so typically here we're going to put a neural network with some maybe a deep neural network with some many hidden neurons, hidden neurons, and so on and so on. Okay, so now I'm going to give few things about extreme value theory. So no need to be an expert. I'm going to be to focus on the main concept only. So first, I'm going to start with one-dimensional distribution. So X here is the one variable you want to regenerate. It has a CDF F, and we're going to consider the quantile Q of this CDF. Okay. So in fact, the case of bounded random variable is quite easy because for a reason I will explain later. For bounded random variable or for light tail random variable, the problem is quite easy. So here we're going to focus on heavy tail distribution. So what happened in the heavy tail distribution? In fact, there's a way to describe that distribution is to define what is the tail index distribution, tail index parameter of this distribution. So think of Pareto. So you have a decay of the survival function, like a power function, and the index, the exponent of this decay is related to this tail index parameter. So in fact, here the survival function will decay like a power function, and the exponent gives you the parameter gamma, like 1 over gamma for the exponent. Okay. And L is a slowing varying function. So I put just the definition here. Okay. So when you have a slowing varying function, a regularly varying function for the survival function, you have the same behavior for the quantile. The quantile is also a regularly varying function with some exponent which is not minus 1 over gamma, but gamma. In fact, you just invert the relation. Okay, so this is the thing we know on the tail of a heavy tail distribution. Okay. And so here, of course, you know this generative method. You just have to pick a uniform distribution, apply the quantile function, and then as an input, you have you sample one endpoint which has the distribution, the standard distribution as X. Okay, so this is the method of inversion of the CDF. Just pick a uniform distribution, apply the quantile function, and then you regenerate the X. So here, in the context of generative modeling, the question is, okay, what is the shape of this quantile function? Is it a function easy to approximate using neural network typically? Okay. So here we have plotted this quantile function for different parameter. Okay, we take Burr distribution. This is a modification of Pareto distribution. And of course, because the heavy tail phenomenon, the quantile function must explode when the level of the quantile is close to 1. Okay, so when U is close to 1, of course, you have a polynomial explosion here. And of course, approximating these with a neural network is quite difficult. Indeed, remember that the result we know is that any continuous function on a compact set could be well approximated by a neural network. We have now some uniform error bounds on these and so on. It could be the case that you can relax the norm. You can not consider only uniform norm, but LP norm. Okay, so indeed, this function can be integrable in LP. So for some P, so you could imagine that you could approximate this function in LP, but approximate the function is not LP doesn't mean that you are accurate in some region of the space. So maybe it's not the right argument to guess that a neural network can approximate well the quantile. Okay, and so indeed this is the case. If you will see that if you just try to approximate a neural network, this function by a neural network, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. In terms of generative modeling, it is really a problem. So we have to do something else. So the first solution I'm going to explain is a transformation of the quantile. We're going to make a transformation we call a tail index function. So what we do is we take the log quantile, we rescale the log quantile like with a log function, which is going to explode as when U is close to 1. Okay, so this function here is a nice function on 0 included up to 1 excluded. In 1 is going to behave like log 1 minus U, exactly like the log quantile. Okay, so if you plot this TIFF function, in fact, you have something which is now bounded. And in fact, what we're going to prove is that when U is close to 1, in fact, this function will converge to a precise value, which is the tail index parameter. So it is a simple transformation which ensures in a way that now the function, the new function, is a nice function in the sense continuous. So there's a hope to approximate it by neural network. The second message I'm going to detail is that when you look a bit at what happens here, you are not very happy because here you see that you may have some infinite gradient here. So of course, neural network doesn't like infinite gradients. So it will be hard to approximate nicely this function with neural network because of this infinite gradient here. Okay, so we have to do something else. This extra thing is what we call corrected TIFF, so correction on the tail index function. So we're going to subtract some universal basis function which has a very specific form so that the new function will be very smooth. Okay, so in fact, there are two gradients I'm going to explain. First, this correction to this tail-ended function, what are the properties of these, and then what are the corrections we have to put on this to have a nice function. And for this nice function, now we can use a neural network. So I'm going to explain now in detail. So I explained before, so the TIF here is the ratio between the log quantile and the log 1 minus u up to some correction term, extra minor term here. Okay, indeed, we can prove that under quite general situation, okay, assumption, so just Evita distribution, we can prove that indeed this function will converge to the tail index parameter. Okay, so this is a continuous function and it is at a limit at u equal 1. So everything is fine. If we want to go to a higher regularity property, we have to put an assumption on the slowly varying term in the Evitel distribution. So for this, we make, so here this is a small dive into the theory of extreme value. So in fact, any slowly varying function can be represented using the Karamata representation. So that is, you can write it as any slowly varying function. So imagine a log or a log or something like this, can be represented as a function going to having a limit, okay, times an exponential of an integral of epsilon t over t, and the epsilon t goes to 0 with some different behavior. And the way to describe how the L is regularly varying of slowly varying is to put assumption on the epsilon here. And we say that the L is normalized when, in fact, we can put this C as a constant and we can put all the variation on the epsilon. And this is really a standard assumption. So the focus now is on the behavior of the epsilon. And the epsilon will be a power function up to a slowly varying term here. And the exponent of the polynomial function will be negative because we need to, for this, the epsilon to goes to 0, okay? And the exponent will be a negative, rho, it will be called the second order parameter. So the larger the rho, so imagine rho equal minus 100 typically, okay? So of course, it means that we will converge fastly to 0. And so essentially, it means that the L is almost constant. And so what is to keep in mind that the most difficult situation correspond to rho close to 0. Typically, rho equal to minus 0.1. So it means that rho will go to 0 very slowly. So then L will be slowly varying, but you will see its variation anyway. Okay. So all the characterization we're going to put is in terms of this second order parameter. So once you assume these second order parameter, okay, exist and so on, of course you can then compute, expand. I go backwards. So you can analyze a bit better the behavior of the quantile close to that point here. Okay, everything is made so that you can differentiate the CDF, the quantile, and so on. So you can analyze what is the behavior of the T function. Okay, so it's an ugly computation. I'm not going to show this, okay? But you can prove that indeed there's no problem in 0. There's never a problem. There's no problem in 0 at all, okay? All the problems come from u equal 1. And indeed, you can expand the derivative of the T function on a basis with some specific function. So typically, the first function is like the inverse of y minus u up to a log square term. The other term, phi j, corresponds to the power of 1 over log to some power here, etc. Okay. So we have some explicit expansion with some ugly parameters here. But in any case, we will compute the explicitly for the learning stage. We won't compute the CJ. It will be just a kind of one part of the other parameter we're going to learn. Okay, we just need to know what are the phi j here. And you see the phi j are just universal function in this context of extreme value theory. Okay, so at the end, the corrected T function, that is the T function to which we subtract some nice basis function. So that to obtain a nice function here, a smooth function, will be defined by this. So we will have a T function minus a linear combination of explicit function, okay, with some unknown parameter here. And so this corrected T function will have a very nice behavior, close to zero, of course, but also close to 1. So it means, what is the important message here is that it will be very easy to learn this function with a neural network because this function is very smooth. Okay, so you see that we're not going to put a neural network directly on the quantile. In fact, we first compute the T function, that is the ratio between the log quantile and a log term here. We subtract some extra term here up to some coefficient we have to learn. And this function will be approximated by a neural network. Okay, so before doing this, what we know about this corrected T function, this is a nice function. And if the second parameter is negative enough, okay, so this is the easy case, then we know that this T function is smooth at least C1. If we can go further, typically, there's no need to dive into the detail. I know this is recorded, so you will have time to read the slides and the assumption. But what is important to note is that if the second order parameter is negative enough, then not only it is a C1 function, but also a C2 function. So of course, you know that the smoother the function, then the easier the problem about approximating the function by a neural network. Okay. So at the end, what is the final approximation of our T function? Well, this is the theorem we have. So I'm going to take time to explain this. So what are we going to do? So we're going to approximate the corrected T function by a neural network. So this is this term here. Okay. We're going to add some linear combination of a basis function I've shown before. So this explicit function with 1 minus u log, etc., etc. So these functions are explicit, but we don't know the coefficient here. Okay. And so what is the result about? It says that if you optimize over the parameter here, so the A, the W, the B, the kappa here, there's a way so that you are sure that for all the components, all the marginal of your distribution, there's a way to approximate well the T function uniformly with this parametrization. Okay, and it is more accurate than this. There's a quantification of how many neurons, how many layers you have to put to be sure that your error is small enough. So here, this is just one hidden layer ReLU generator with J neurons on the hidden layer. So here, this is for the case for negative enough, sufficiently negative second order parameter. If you have worst case to deal with, that is a rho close to 0, then you're going to decrease the accuracy here. This is also quantified. Okay. So we have a way to compute. We are sure that this parameterization will accurately approximate the T function. So now we just have to invert the relation between the quantile and the T function. Remember, the T is the ratio between the log quantile and a log function. Okay, so it's easy to take the exponential and invert this. And so at the end, what will be the things is that the way we're going to generate Evitel distribution or Evitel vector will be the following one. Okay, we invert the TIF relation. This is that inversion here. And what we're going to put as an argument and exponent here is the way we're going to approximate the tail exponent. And so the tail exponent will be approximated the neural network here plus some corrected term before. Okay, so at the end, the architecture will be the following one. You have a neural network here with some input. You can take uniform distribution typically. Okay, you have your ILU here. It will generate some G1, G2 if you have two components for your for the data you want to simulate. You add to these G1, G2 some linear combination of these E1, E6 function here. You put everything together and you retransform by this inversion of TIF function to generate your data. Okay, and so here the dash point here the dash line correspond to the parameter you have to learn here. So you just have to learn this. Okay. In addition, we before showing you some result, we have some additional measure of accuracy. So typically, if you focus on what happens marginal by marginal, we are sure that typically there's a zero missing here. Sorry. Typically, the Wasserstein 1 distance is well controlled in terms of neural network. Okay, so you can you have a good control on all the distribution with some control of the accuracy. Okay, so what I'm going to show now is some result with this first method. So in fact, there are two things to measure in terms of accuracy. First, the accuracy of the marginal. Okay, so imagine you have two coordinates to sample. So you want to be sure that each marginal is well sampled. And also you want to control the dependence between the marginals. So just remember that the result I've shown ensures that the marginal are well approximated, but there's no result on the joint distribution. Okay, this is something maybe I can show again. Remember here, this is we have a control on each marginal, but we don't have a control of error on the full distribution, on the joint distribution. This is a difficult question. Okay, so to measure the accuracy on the marginal, we're going to use a mean square logarithmic error. Okay, so essentially we're going to take what happens on an extreme quantile at some level. So typically we're going to take 95% or 99%. Okay, and for the distribution, the joint distribution, okay, there's many ways to measure the dependence between the coordinates. So here we're going to use a scalar criterion, which is called absolute Kendall error. So this is based on the evaluation of the Kendall function. The Kendall function is the joint CDF applied to the random variable here. Okay, and you compute what is the probability that the joint CDF applied to the variable x is below t. Okay, so we're going to compute this Kendall function for the input sample and for the generated sample. And if the two quantity coincide, then we could say that we have a good reproduction of the dependence between the data. But this is just a scalar measure. So the nice thing is that there's a way to compute this Kendall function using just a data set of points. So it's quite easy to use. And this is the formula area. Okay, so we start with synthetic data first. Okay, so we start with a big data set of 10,000 points from Evitel distribution here. So we take a Baire distribution for the marginals, and for the dependence between the two coordinates, we take a Gumbel copula with some parameter mu. Okay, so at the end, in our experiment, we have three parameters: the tail index parameter gamma, okay, the second order parameter rho, which is negative, okay, and for necessarily negative. So When rho is close to 0, this is a difficult problem, okay? And when rho is really negative, this is an easier problem. And the parameter mu coming from for the dependence, okay? So on the here we report the mean square logarithmic error, okay, at some level here. So what you see here, the first column corresponds to the best GAN we have optimized. So you see we are observing a big error when you using a GAN. And when we're using our extreme value GAN, the method I've shown before, we have something much more accurate, in fact. Okay, so here there's no doubt about which method is the most accurate. This is clearly a vegan, and we have different for other experimentation. Other example, it works. This is as efficient as this. When you look at the data, you can compute the log quantile. You can compute the log quantile versus the log 1 minus u. Okay, so this is this log plot. So you see that when you have optimized, so the orange point corresponds to the points sampled with the GAN. So you see that you are very far from the true distribution here, which is in black, okay? And when you start with this parameter, this tail index parameter here, 0.9, you expect that normally the slope should be close to 0.9. So you see what happens here. The GAN is able to generate some extreme points, but with a tail index parameter, which is 0.1 instead of 0.9. So we are very, very far from these heavy tails case, in fact. Okay. So there's a clear underestimation of the tail using GAN. Using a VGAN, this is a bit better typically because the estimated slope is about 0.7, close to 0.9. Okay, so a bit better. Regarding the dependence, all methods are quite accurate. Here, we don't see any problem on the dependence, but this is a two-dimensional case. When we move to a high-dimensional setting, this is quite easy because with Archimedean copula, this is quite easy to scale in high dimension. So we tested the accuracy also when you increase the dimension, not only 2, but we wanted to target maybe dimension 100 or 1000. So at some point, of course, GAN doesn't work at all. So up to dimension 4, you can obtain something reasonable. Reasonable in that sense. It's not accurate, but you obtain something. But after dimension 5, 6, you can't obtain something if you focus on the tail. So in fact, the GAN doesn't provide any result for this extreme generation. The method of VGAN still works. So of course, at some point, it is not as accurate as we would expect, but it works. It gives some result. And for the dependence, the absolute Kendall error, it works reasonably fine in small dimension. You see, the error is quite nice up to dimension 10, but at some point, it is less and less accurate. Okay, so this is what happens. Up to dimension, you see 4, 8, 10, it is okay, but the Kendall function is depicted here. Okay, the true one is depicted here with the in black here. The blue one is the one we obtain with the data we generate. So at the beginning it is okay, but when the dimension is quite large, you see that there's a big difference between what we sample, what we obtain from the new point and from the data set. So it means that in a sentence, this VGAN is nice for small dimension, I would say up to dimension 10, but for high dimension problem, okay, there's still an improvement to find. We have also some result with using real data. So here we have we took some log returns from different stock market indices. So there's a pre-processing of this data just to be sure that we have synchronized data, because you know that the business days are different in US, in Europe, in Asia. So we have to cope with this. But once you have pre-processing the data, just to have always the data at the same timestamps. We have a big data set to deal with. Okay. And these are the results. So here, of course, we don't know what is the model, but when we try to fit a GAN or an EVGAN, we see that in any case, the EVGAN achieves the best accuracy for our computation. Okay, details are in the paper. So we use, in fact, to this technology, this method to run a challenge, generative hackathon challenge. In fact, this method was the best one. Okay, so I think I have to be careful on the time. So I think it remains 15 minutes, something like this. Okay, I'm going to just summarize a bit what we have said so far before moving to the second part of the talk, which is much shorter. So I presented you a parameterization to generate multivariate vector, multivariate random variable based on a data set of extreme values. So it is a parameterization very suitable for generating extreme events. It is not exactly directly a neural network parameterization. We have to be careful about this. This is a non-linear transformation of neural network with this T function. And the T function, we have to add some universal correction terms. And these correction terms are related to coefficients we learn with the parameter of a neural network. This parameterization is very accurate on the marginal and accurate on the dependence up to at least in small dimension. For large dimension, there's something for further improvement. Okay, now I would like to present you an alternative parameterization to generate still extreme values, so tail event. Okay. So I want to go back to the way the quantile can be transformed or analyzed or represented. In fact, if we go a bit deeper in the way we represent the quantile, there's a very nice property we can emphasize, which is really related to the ELU function I've mentioned before. Okay. So we still focus on Evitel distribution. Okay, so nothing new on this part. And now the things we want to do is represent the log quantile at different level. So typically here there's a level delta n we call a level of attachment. Okay, so this delta n corresponds to typically a probability of level of data you have observed. So typically you have observed this quantile at level delta n. So typically delta n is much larger than 1 over n. Okay. So in the sense that n delta n goes to infinity, so it's large. Okay. So typically this quantile has been observed. Okay. And you want to to approximate a quantile which is much further in the tail. So alpha n should be much smaller than 1 over n. Okay, so typically this is a problem of quantile extrapolation. This is a quantile you observe. This is a quantile you want to predict or you want to sample. So when you write the difference of the log between the quantile you observe and the quantile you want to extrapolate, you obtain this formula, okay, which is simply algebra using this Evitel representation, okay. And so you obtain the gamma, which is the tail index parameter, with the the log of difference between delta and alpha n, okay? And a function phi, which is whatever the formula is related to the slowly varying function L, computing as some parameter here, okay? So here you have a function phi of x1, x2, and what is important for you to keep in mind is that the value x1, x2 are here positive, sorry, because x1 is related to log delta n divided by alpha n. So keep in mind that alpha n is smaller than delta n. Okay, you want to extrapolate, so you want to go further. So alpha n is correspond to a quantile further in the tail. So alpha n is smaller than delta n, and this is positive here. Okay, so one way to do extrapolation or sampling is just to compute empirically the quantile here, to estimate gamma using the Hill estimator, and then just put for the function phi just 0. This is the Weissman trick, okay? And then you have a way to predict or to generate a quantile in the tail. Of course, it's really inaccurate. So if you want to go further, you need to dive into the second order condition, the things I've mentioned before, just emphasizing on the previously it was the function epsilon. So you're going to put a condition on the function epsilon. The function epsilon will be related to a second order condition with a second order parameter rho, which is negative here. And when you use this condition in the definition of the phi function here, okay, and you just make some basic computation, what you observe is that the phi function, if you neglect all the residual here, will be a product of two exponential, okay? But the arguments of the exponential are very specific. You have rho2 times x2. x2, remember, x1 are positive. They correspond to this value here. And you multiply by rho2. Rho2 is the second order parameter, which is negative. So what you compute here is a product of exponential which arguments are negative. So in fact, what you evaluate here is exactly the Illu function on the negative axis. So this is the key observation is that under second order condition, the phi function you try to approximate is in fact just intrinsically represented as Illu function, as a linear combination of Illu function. This is very surprising. Okay, so in terms of neural approximation, it means it's meaningless to approximate this phi function using a ReLU neural network. It is meaningful to use Illu neural network because naturally, intrinsically, the phi function is up to some approximation represented very well with Illu neural network. Okay, of course, you can imagine that we have generalized this principle to any higher order higher order condition, not only second order condition. So you can imagine you can define not only second order parameter, but third order parameter, fourth order parameter, and so on and so on. So that you can decompose the slowly varying function in this way. And in that case, the phi function I've shown before. So remember, this is the things, this function you want to put here to be able to approximate or extrapolate or sample the quantile in the tail. This phi function here can be very well approximated by neural network made of Illu function. This is just simply a linear combination of Illu function with some appropriate weights. Okay, so of course we don't going to compute the weight explicitly. We're just going to ask the neural network or the observation stage to learn this coefficient directly. Okay, and so when you put everything all together, what you have a result which says that essentially you can approximate using this new parameterization made of Illu function with a single hidden layer you can approximate very well any quantile in the tail with some accuracy depending on the summation of these higher order parameter. Okay. So of course, if you increase the number of neurons, then you obtain a quicker convergence because you will obtain here, you will take more and more terms. If you have a rho small close to 0, then of course the convergence is very small, is very slow. Sorry. Okay, we know that this is a problem which is harder, and to learn the ELU neural network, we just have to regress the log spacing respect the log priority level. So in fact, what we have to do is to learn this regression. We want to regress these on this kind of function. So we solve a regression problem before generating the data. And what we obtain is that if you sample now randomly the alpha n, you have a generative model, which we call extreme value Bayes reduced GAN. So I have a few plots to show you. So this is a temporary result. This is still a work in progress, partly. Okay. So maybe it remains 5 minutes. So I'm going to be a bit fast. So essentially, we took a sample of size 500. We made several replica of this data set just to compute some statistical error. And we did what I explained. So that is, we try to predict a quantile further in the tail. So typically here we want to predict the quantile not much further in the tail, but just in the a bit further in the tail. So this is not 1/n. The last observed point is at the level 1/n. So here we go at the level 1/2n. Okay. So we have compared in terms of extrapolation the ability of this new parameter to predict what is the quantile at that level. And so of course there are many competitors, and we took a situation where the bias in the prediction is quite big. So we correspond to second order parameter, which is close to 0. So you see that most of the competitors are not able to produce a prediction of the quantile in the tail here. There's only one able to predict for this range of second order parameter. Okay. And in any case, the method I've shown you is able to produce the most accurate prediction of the quantile. So here, this is just a prediction of the quantile a bit further in the tail. Now I'm going to show you some extra result when I'm going to randomize the alpha n, just to use this parameter as a generative modeling algorithm. Okay, so surprisingly, it doesn't work that well compared to the previous method Avigan. So we have the same kind of experiment as before. Here we see in a bivariate setting. Okay, so we just focus on a bidimensional example. Okay, so this is the mean square logarithmic error for the GAN, for the Avigan, and for the Bayes reduced GAN. Okay. And in boldface, the figure corresponding to the most accurate method. And you see that most of the cases, the Avigan is the best one. Okay. So for me, it's a bit surprising because we did everything to be sure that, in fact, the Bayes reduced GAN is intrinsically a good approximation of the quantile. And at the end, despite this, it is not numerically the most accurate one. Okay, so sometimes it works indeed. Okay, for some tail, for heavy tail, really heavy tails, from some specific dependency, it works better. But okay, often this is the Avigan is the best one. Graphically, it's not easy to distinguish what is the best one. You see that both methods, the GAN is still still doesn't work, okay? But between the blue point corresponding to the EVGAN or the green point corresponding to the new extreme value Bayes reduced GAN, you see that both method works similarly. So graphically, it works, but when you compute statistics, EVGAN is a bit better. In terms of dependence, okay, it's not there's no big difference, but with a plus to the EVGAN compared to the Bayes reduced GAN. But we keep in mind that all the results we have are only results about the accuracy on the marginals, not on the dependence. Okay, so there's no control on the error in the dependence. And so when we go further in the dimension, in higher dimension, so still GAN doesn't work, EVGAN works, but the best and Bayes reduced GANs works, but okay, fails to accurate. So here we have deleted the value when the value were too big. So in a way, the ability to accurately approximate the marginal is not that good for this new EVBR GAN for large dimension, but for the measure of dependence, this is better compared to GAN, to the EVGAN. So you see the marginal are not well reproduced compared to EVGAN, but the dependence are well reproduced. So of course, we are working now on trying to take the best thing from the two methods, having the best performance on the marginal coming from the EVGAN and the best performance on the dependence coming from the EVBR GAN. So this is a work in progress. Okay, I'm going to finish my presentation here. So I've presented two types of architecture based on a neural network, one on ReLU, one on eLU. What is striking maybe is to note that eLU seems to be the natural parameterization to well approximate extreme values. So this is was something striking. We have some theoretical guarantees that marginal are accurately reproduced, I mean, in terms of complexity and number of neural networks. And in any case, this is much better than usual GANs. So this is the things for sure. We have also a version of all this work where we want to sample conditional extreme values. So we have another setting, an extension of this where we deal with a conditional extreme values, so conditional tail. Okay, something we can talk about this later. And now we are working on a different extension. I think trying to be more accurate on the about the dependence, and there's a PhD work ongoing with Jean Pacheba on this topic. And I think I'm finished. I'm done now. Thank you very much. And I'm very open to questions.
Thank you, Manuel, for this very interesting talk. We have time for some questions. If any. So maybe, yeah, I think this issue of dependencies is a big question. I know at least in statistics, how to model dependencies of extreme events is a big question. So here you are just relying on the GAN or EVGAN construction. So I didn't quite get exactly the dependencies. Where do they come in place? So it's just a multivariate function that maps the input to the output.
So here typically you can put many z as input, okay, just to generate many coordinates. But when we focus only on the accuracy of each marginal coordinate by coordinate. And so there's no result. We can't prove, we are not able to prove a result where we could say that the joint marginal is accurately reproduced, in fact. So in fact, you see that you put many noise as input, you mix everything, you are sure that this coordinate is well reproduced, this coordinate is well reproduced, but together we are not sure.
So in the numerical test that you have tried, there was a strong dependence on the stream events, or?
Yeah. Typically taking these Archimedean copula ensure that you have a strong dependence in the tail, for sure.
Mhm.
So you should observe dependence in the tail. Your data set has dependence in the tail, and you expect that your generative model should have also the same kind of dependence.
Mhm.
So the message was, okay, for 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 coordinates, that's fine. It is well reproduced. But for higher dimension, it doesn't work. But that's true that we don't have any theoretical result in that direction.
More work to do.
But work, yes, more work to do. Indeed. more things to understand.
Any other question or comment? Okay, if not, we thank Emmanuel again.
I see Raphael raising his hand, maybe.
Yes. Can I just ask a question quickly?
Ah,
Yeah, so thank you very much for your very interesting presentation. So I really enjoyed it. So my question is that in your examples in the multivariate case, you mostly focus on the Gumbel copula, right?
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you have also thought about testing your method in spatial settings for models for spatial extremes that are perhaps the Brown-Resnick model or this type of more complex dependent structures.
No. We haven't explored much over dependency in the tail. We have to see the most vanilla parameterization of the dependence, but no, I couldn't tell you what would be the result in that setting.
Okay, thank you.
But for sure, you ask a very good question. I'm sure there are many things to understand and to be done still in that about the dependence in the tail, dependence in general, in the tails in particular.
Okay, thank you very much.
okay, well, thank you again, Emmanuel. So I think we move to the next talk by Anders. Anders, you're online.